Okay guys, today's Mr.O math vid is going to focus on midpoints, and we've got two aspects. The first is we're going to find a midpoint using two endpoints. And in order to do that, the first thing we need to do is we need to label, because you notice that the points were given x1, y1, x2, y2. So we need to go ahead and label those for ourselves. So 8 is x1, negative 9 is y1, 0 is x2, because it's the second x value given, just like 5 is going to be y2 because it's the second y value given. And then from here we just plug the numbers into our formula, substitute those in. So our formula is going to be x1, which is 8, plus x2, which is 0, all divided by 2 because we're just taking the average of the x's, comma, negative 9 plus 5, all over 2. And coming over to the calculator, we will do both of those. So 8 plus 0 divided by 2 gives us 4. And then negative 9 plus 5 divided by 2 gives us negative 2. And just a word of warning at this point, both of those numbers came out as integers, nice round numbers, terminated at the 0 for the decimal. But don't be surprised if you do get a decimal. That can happen. So just keep that in mind and you'll be just fine. So now we're going to scroll down to the next problem. And this time we've got a slightly different issue. We are given a midpoint and an endpoint, and we've got to find the other one. So we could use the formula, we could tear it apart that way and solve it algebraically. If that's how you want to do it, by all means. But I'm going to demonstrate something a little different today. And that is, I want to think about this from the standpoint of, we know that the endpoint has to be the same distance or equidistant from the midpoint. So let's focus on each dimension. Let's focus on the x, let's focus on the y, and just think about this logically. So the midpoint of the x is 3, while the midpoint of the y is 5. And then the endpoint, oh, I'm sorry, that's not right. The midpoint of our y was negative 1. Sorry. Then we have the endpoint of our x value is 5. Now 5 is bigger than 3 numerically, so we'll put that on the higher side of the number line. And then our y is negative 7. Well, negative 7 is less than negative 1. So we'll put that on the lower side of the number line. And then this is how this works. We know these two distances from the midpoint out to each midpoint has to be the same distance. Well, in this case, how do we get from 3 to 5? We added 2. So in order to counterbalance that, to find the other endpoint, we should go the other direction and we should minus 2. Resulting in 3 minus 2, which is 1. So we know the x-coordinate of our endpoint has a value of 1. And now let's check out the y. To go from negative 1 to negative 7, and you can do negative 7 minus negative 1 if you need to, but that is negative 6. So if we went 6 in a negative direction in order to find our endpoint coordinate, we're going to have to go 6 in the positive direction, and -1 plus 6 should be 5, giving our y-coordinate of our endpoint 5. So our final endpoint should be 1, 5, given that we have done this correctly. So good luck, guys, and hope you do well on that math.